When my daughter-in-law announced baby number 5, my son celebrated by raising his glass. Then, he looked right at me and said, "You'll handle the kids." He dropped it so casually, like he was just assigning me a shift at work. I set my napkin on the table, held his gaze, and said, "Absolutely not." The dining room plunged into a thick silence. Chloe, my daughter-in-law, blinked a few times, letting her practice smile drop. My son, Derek, let out a nervous chuckle, assuming I had to be joking. I'm 62, widowed for 10 years, and over time, I had gotten used to being the invisible pillar holding up their daily routine. Little by little, my house, with its big backyard and nice patio, had been turned into a free daycare, a storage unit for their old furniture, and a weekend diner. "Come on, Mom, don't be like that," Derek muttered, pouring himself more wine. "Chloe's going to have a rough pregnancy. She needs to stay off her feet. You've got plenty of time." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't defend myself, either. I just looked at the half-eaten plates of food, the toys scattered all over my living room floor, and the entitled look on Chloe's face. For years, I had caved because I loved my grandkids. I'd put my own life on hold, canceling doctor's appointments or lunches with friends because they always seemed to have a sudden emergency that conveniently lined up with a shopping trip or a football game. "My time belongs to me, Derek," I answered, calmly standing up from my chair and starting to clear the dirty dishes. "Congratulations on the baby, but you're going to have to figure out another solution." Chloe crossed her arms, instantly offended. "It's your family, Diane. I thought you cared about your grandchildren." I didn't take the emotional bait. I carried the plates to the sink, turned on the faucet, and let the water run behind me. I could hear Derek whispering to his wife to calm down, assuring her that I'd get over my little tantrum. They gathered their things and left, slamming the front door behind them. That night, as I wiped down my kitchen counters in silence, I knew the real test hadn't even started yet. What I didn't expect was how quickly they would try to force my hand. Early the next morning, my phone rang. "Hello, Mrs. Carter." A tense, professional voice greeted me. It was the director of the community rec center down the street, where my older grandkids usually took summer swim lessons. She informed me that Derek had dropped the 3 oldest kids off in the lobby before the doors were even officially open. He had handed the front desk receptionist a note claiming that their grandmother, would be there to pick them up in 10 minutes and would watch them for the rest of the day. The director was calling because almost an hour had passed. The kids were sitting on a bench with their backpacks, and the center couldn't take responsibility for them without a guardian present. A sharp pang of anger hit my chest, but I kept my breathing steady. "I'll be there in 5 minutes," I told her. I parked in front of the brick building and walked in. The kids were staring at the floor, looking entirely lost. I gave each of them a kiss on the forehead, promised them everything was fine, and walked up to the front desk. The director handed me the note. It was scribbled in my son's rushed handwriting. I pulled out my phone and sent Derek a single text message. "Your children are in the lobby of the rec center. You have 20 minutes to come get them before the director follows protocol and calls Child Protective Services." My phone rang seconds later. I ignored it. It rang twice more. 15 minutes later, Derek's SUV slammed on the brakes right in front of the entrance. He stormed into the lobby, his face flushed, marching straight toward me. "What is your problem?" he hissed, grabbing the kids by the shoulders. "You pulled me out of a meeting. I left you a note. I'm not a drop-off bin where you can just stash your responsibilities." "Derek," I replied, keeping my voice low but firm, fully aware of the staff watching us. "Do not ever use my name without my permission again. He looked at me with a mix of fury and total confusion. He was so used to me being a pushover that my spine completely threw him off. "Perfect," he spat out, shoving the kids toward the door. "If that's how you want it, forget about seeing them." That threat used to terrify me. This time, I just nodded. Derek stood there for a second, expecting me to chase his car and beg for forgiveness. Instead, I simply turned around and drove home, my mind clearer than it had been in years. When I got home, I made myself a cup of coffee in the French press. The rich smell filled the kitchen, a small morning luxury I rarely got to enjoy without being interrupted. I sat at the wooden table and looked at my home with fresh eyes. My house didn't even feel like mine anymore. A playpen that hadn't been used in months was taking up the corner of the living room. The guest bedroom was crammed with boxes of Derek and Chloe's winter coats because their closets were too small. The main shelf in my pantry was loaded with sugary cereals and juice boxes. I couldn't stand all bought with my own money for whenever they decided to pop over unannounced. They had colonized my living space the exact same way they had colonized my time. I left my empty mug in the sink. I went to the garage, grabbed a stack of cardboard boxes and a roll of packing tape. And for the next 2 hours, I worked in absolute silence. I folded Chloe's clothes, broke down the playpen, packed up the scattered toys, and cleared their junk food out of my pantry. I stacked every single box right by the front door. As I taped the last box shut, I stared at the front door lock. Derek and Chloe had their own key. They used it to let themselves in when I wasn't home, sometimes to use my heavy-duty washer and dryer, other times to raid the fridge or drop off more junk. They never even bothered to ring the doorbell anymore. I pulled out my contacts and found the number for Gary, the local locksmith. "Hey, Gary," I said when he answered. "Can you come out this afternoon? I need the deadbolts changed on both exterior doors." "Yes, today. Please." When Gary finished the job and dropped a shiny new set of keys into my hand, I felt a massive weight lift off my shoulders. That cold metal in my palm meant way more than just security. It was me taking my territory back. I didn't need to argue, cry, or explain myself. Sometimes, the strongest boundaries don't require any words at all. I slept like a rock that night. I knew the real showdown was coming soon, probably the next day when their entitlement crashed headfirst into my new reality. At 10 o'clock the next morning, I heard tires crunching on the gravel in my driveway. From the kitchen window, I watched Chloe step out of her car. She was balancing a massive laundry basket on her hip. Like every Thursday, she was here to hijack my laundry room, saving herself water, electricity, and detergent. I walked into the hallway and stood perfectly still. I heard the metallic scrape of her key sliding into the lock, a dull click. Then, the sound of her wrestling with the doorknob. A few impatient knocks rattled the wood. "Diane!" she yelled from the porch. "The door's stuck." I opened it slowly. Chloe glared at me, struggling to hold up the heavy basket. "What is wrong with your lock?" "My key won't turn." "I had the deadbolts changed yesterday," I informed her, leaning against the door frame. I didn't step aside to let her in. She blinked, her brain struggling to process it. "Well, where's my spare?" "There is no spare for you, Chloe. This is my house." Her neck started to get blotchy and red. "I have to wash the kids' clothes. You know our washer makes that awful grinding noise." "Then you'll need to call an appliance repairman," I suggested evenly. Before she could argue, I pointed to the boxes stacked on the porch right behind her, which she hadn't even noticed. "Since you're here, you can go ahead and take your things." I cleared out the guest room. I needed the space. Chloe looked at the boxes, then back at me like I had lost my mind. "You can't be serious. I am pregnant." Diane, I can't lift all this. And Derek's at work. What are we supposed to do? Come back and get it together this weekend. I'll leave it under the awning so it doesn't get wet if it rains. I replied. You're kicking me out of your house, she accused, her voice trembling, trying to hit that guilt button. I'm returning your belongings, I corrected. Have a good day. I shut the door. I heard a loud thud as she dropped the laundry basket on the concrete, followed by the sound of her angry footsteps stomping back to her car. I went to the kitchen to make some tea. While the water was boiling, my phone buzzed on the counter. It was an alert from my banking app, and looking at it, I knew exactly what my next move had to be. The notification on my screen showed a $120 charge at a gas station that included a premium car wash and snacks from the convenience store. The card used was an authorized user card linked to my account that I had given to Derek 2 years ago. The original agreement was simple. It was strictly for the kids' medical emergencies or urgent pharmacy runs if I wasn't around. Over time, my son's definition of emergency had become incredibly flexible. 1 month, it was a tank of gas. The next, a quick dinner out because they were just too exhausted to cook. I had always let it slide, telling myself it was just my way of helping the family out. I opened my laptop and logged into my bank account. I pulled up the statements for the last 3 months. Restaurants, digital subscriptions, a sporting goods store. The constant bleeding of my retirement savings into their everyday comforts was documented line by line. I didn't call Derek to demand an explanation. It wasn't worth getting into a debate where he'd inevitably complain about inflation and tell me I just didn't understand the pressure he was under. I simply clicked into the settings, selected his secondary card, and hit permanently block. While I was logged in, I checked my automatic transfers. On the first of every month, $400 went straight into his account labeled after-school activities. I knew for a fact the kids had quit travel soccer and art classes months ago. I hit cancel. I shut the laptop right as the clock struck 1 p.m. The afternoon was completely peaceful right up until 8 p.m., when the doorbell rang long and aggressively. When I opened it, Derek was standing there. His tie was loosened, and he was gripping his wallet. "Did you cancel the card?" he demanded, skipping the hello. "I tried to pay for a business dinner and my card got declined. I was humiliated in front of my clients. That card was for your children's medicine." "Derek, not for whining and dining clients," I said, crossing my arms. "Is this because of the rec center? Are you seriously taking revenge?" he yelled. "It's not revenge. It's management," I clarified. "I'm not funding your lifestyle anymore. Good night." And for the second time that day, I shut the door in his face. The following day, I decided to spend the morning doing some yard work. I was out front pruning my rose bushes when I heard an engine rev and then brake hard right at the curb. I stood up, pulling off my gardening gloves. It was Derek. He threw open the back door of his SUV, pulled out the 4-year-old twins, handed them their backpacks, and slammed the door shut. He looked at me over my wrought iron gate. "Chloe has terrible morning sickness. I have to get to the office." "You're watching them. Step up and do your job," he barked from the sidewalk. He jumped back into his car and sped off before I could even open my mouth, leaving 2 confused toddlers standing on the concrete. Any other grandmother in my shoes would have panicked or called her son screaming. I didn't do either. I opened the gate, gave my grandsons a big smile so they wouldn't be scared, and brought them inside. I cut up some fruit for them and set them up in front of the TV with their favorite cartoons. Once they were settled, I picked up my phone. I didn't call Derek. I didn't call Chloe. I scrolled through my contacts to a number I rarely used. "Hello." A crisp, formal voice answered. "Hi, Beverly. It's Diane." I said. Beverly was Chloe's mother, a very strict woman who cared deeply about appearances and proper behavior. Diane, what a surprise. Is everything all right? Actually, no, I explained, keeping my tone perfectly calm and entirely devoid of drama. A few minutes ago, Derek dumped the twins on the curb outside my house and drove off. Chloe is apparently feeling sick, but I have a doctor's appointment in an hour and I can't watch them. Since neither of them are answering their phones, I was hoping you could come get the kids. I'd really rather not get the authorities involved. Dead silence on the other end of the line. Beverly valued the image of a perfect family above all else. I will be right there, she snapped, in an icy tone that I knew wasn't aimed at me. I poured myself another cup of coffee. I knew the fallout from that phone call was going to change the rules of the game forever. Beverly showed up in less than 30 minutes. She marched into my house, gave the boys a quick pat on the head, and turned to me. I offered her a seat and showed her, without adding any personal commentary, the log of my unanswered calls to Derek and Chloe. I also casually mentioned the incident at the rec center from a few days ago. Beverly's face turned to stone. As a matriarch used to keeping her daughters in line, the sheer irresponsibility I was describing was completely unacceptable to her. She thanked me for my time, grabbed the twins by the hands, and marched out, promising she was going to put an end to this nonsense. I can only imagine the chewing out that happened at their house, but the effects were immediate. Mid-afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from the extended family group chat. Chloe had posted a long, dramatic paragraph. It is so heartbreaking when you realize you can't rely on your own family, especially when you are vulnerable and pregnant. What a massive disappointment. A few aunts immediately replied with sad face emojis, asking what happened. Derek chimed in with a passive-aggressive, "Sometimes people just change and get selfish." I read the messages from my armchair. A year ago, this would have destroyed me. I would have called them begging for forgiveness just to avoid the family's judgment. This time, I took a different route. I opened my phone's camera, walked outside, and took a photo of the 2 toddler car seats Derek had dumped on my lawn. I dropped the picture into the group chat. I added a short, completely factual text. Derek left the twins alone on the curb outside my gate this morning while I was busy, and drove off. Thankfully, Beverly was able to come pick them up. The car seats are still in the yard whenever you want to come get them. The chat went dead. For 45 minutes, nobody typed a single word. Their victim narrative completely collapsed under the weight of a time-stamped photo. A little while later, I saw that Derek was typing. Derek's message came through privately. "I'm coming over. We need to talk." He arrived at sundown. This time, he didn't barge in making demands. He sat on my sofa, wringing his hands, playing the role of a stressed-out man pushed to the brink. Chloe didn't come. She was probably still dealing with the wrath of her own mother. "Mom, you're taking this way too far," he started, using that soft, pleading voice he used when he broke something as a teenager. "You're humiliating us in front of everyone. Chloe's been crying all afternoon. We have a 5th kid on the way, and we're drowning in expenses. We need our mother, not an enemy." I listened without interrupting. It was a speech perfectly engineered to trigger my protective instincts. When he finished, I stood up and walked over to the small wooden desk in the corner. I pulled out a small blue ledger and handed it to him. "Turn to page 10, I said, sitting back down. He opened it, frowning. Right there, meticulously dated, was every expense I had covered for them over the last 2 years. The weekly grocery hauls, the canceled credit card bills, the activity transfers. The entire weekends I gave up to babysit while they went on little getaways. I didn't know you were keeping score, he muttered, looking highly uncomfortable. That's really cold, Mom. We're family. No, Derek, it's clarity, I replied, without a trace of bitterness. I have been the financial and logistical safety net for your choices. You decided to have 5 children. That is a blessing. But it's your blessing, not mine to fund. So what, you're just turning your back on us? He asked, tossing the ledger onto the coffee table. I am giving you back your independence. I will always be your mother and their grandmother. But I am done being your unpaid employee and your ATM. Derek stood up. The fake apology vanished, replaced by the cold realization that I wasn't going to budge. Chloe was right, he snapped before walking out. You don't deserve to see the kids if you aren't willing to help. He slammed the door. The ultimate threat was officially on the table, and I knew exactly how to respond. The punishment Derek and Chloe designed was total isolation. They stopped sending pictures of the kids to the family chat. If I called to wish the little ones a happy birthday, it went straight to voicemail. They knew my grandkids were my weak spot, and they were banking on the silence breaking me. They calculated that in a week or two, I'd be on their doorstep in tears, handing over my credit card and my free time in exchange for a hug. But I didn't. Did it hurt not seeing the kids? Of course it did. There were afternoons when the quiet in my house was deafening, but I flat out refused to feed into their manipulation. Instead of spiraling, I started filling the spaces they used to occupy. I signed up for a pottery class downtown. I cleaned out the corner of the yard where their broken trampoline used to sit and planted a row of hydrangeas. For the first time in 15 years, I booked a weekend getaway with Barb, my neighbor, without the nagging fear that I'd have to cancel at the last minute for one of Derek's emergencies. 4 weeks went by, then 6. The hydrangeas started to bloom, and my savings account, finally free from the constant hemorrhaging, looked healthier than it had in years. The boycott they started to punish me had actually become my sanctuary. Meanwhile, they were getting a brutal crash course in raising 4 kids on their own, paying actual babysitters and juggling schedules without my free labor. One Tuesday evening, I was reading a book on the porch when I saw a familiar minivan turn the corner and roll slowly to a stop in front of my house. I closed my book, pushed my glasses up my nose, and waited. I knew that in a standoff of silence, whoever blinks first is the one who needs something. Derek and Chloe stepped out of the van. Chloe, heavily pregnant now, waddled slowly up the walk. They looked thoroughly exhausted, sporting the kind of deep, dark under-eye circles you only get from chronic sleep deprivation and stress. The arrogance from months ago was completely gone. They stopped at the bottom of my porch steps. They didn't try to use a ghost key, and they didn't demand to come inside. Hey, Mom, Derek said, his voice quiet. Hi, Derek. Chloe, I replied from my rocking chair, not bothering to stand up. What can I do for you? Chloe stared at her shoes for a second before looking up at me. She tried for a smile, but gave up halfway. Diane, we have an appointment with the OBGYN this Friday afternoon. It's really important. Derek can't miss it, and our sitter just canceled on us. We wanted to ask if you were free. Would you be willing to watch the kids for a couple of hours, just from 4 to 6? The shift was monumental. No orders, no emotional blackmail. For the very first time, it was an actual request. They used words like ask and willing. I looked at them for a long moment. My goal was never to cut them out of my life forever. It was to restructure how we existed in each other's lives. Yes, I said calmly. I can watch them on Friday, but I have plans at exactly 6 o'clock. so I need you to be on time to pick them up." Derek let out a breath so heavy his shoulders actually dropped an inch. "Thank you. Mom, we'll be here at 6. Promise." When they drove away, I stayed on the porch, enjoying the cool evening breeze. That Friday, my house filled up with laughter, scattered toys, and sticky hands again. I baked cookies, and we played out by the hydrangeas. I was just their grandmother. And at 5:55, Derek's car was idling in the driveway. Taking my life back didn't require screaming matches or lawyers. I just had to remember the value of my own front door key, the weight of my own choices, and the profound peace waiting on the other side of a simple no. Today, my door is always open to my family. But the price of admission is respect.